afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to this highly anticipated session on entrepreneurship and innovation as a career opportunity. We are thrilled to have you all with us today in this session. At SCDL, at the Institution Innovation Council, we are always committed to nurturing and empowering future innovators and entrepreneurs. Today's session is an exciting opportunity to gain insights into how entrepreneurship and innovation can serve as a rewarding career path. So before we dive into today's session, let me briefly introduce our esteemed speaker for today's session, who has not only made an incredible mark in the field of entrepreneurship, but also continues to inspire countless budding innovators. So our today's speaker, Mr. Nilesh Lele, a dynamic technocrat and first generation entrepreneur with almost 20 years of experience across diverse fields, both in India and in USA. Mr. Nilesh holds a chemical engineering degree from the Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai and MBA from USA. His journey in entrepreneurship is truly inspiring. Currently, Mr. Nilesh is founder and managing director of Exelon Food Bioadvisory Private Limited. He is also proprietor of two highly successful ventures, Exelon Basket and Protein Beverages. In addition to his entrepreneurial success, Mr. Nilesh is a co-founder of Food Tech Pathshala, an e-learning platform that has trained over 10,000 e-learners since its inception in January 2022 recently. His passion for innovation and commitment to contributing to the food and beverage industry are unmatched. Mr. Nilesh is also deeply committed to his professional community. Like he is a president of Chamber of Advancement of Small and Medium Businesses and a vice president of Association of Food Scientists Technologies India. He has served as a mentor for startups in the food and beverage and agriculture sectors under Startup India initiative DPIIT Government of India. His contributions to promoting to the Eat Right India movement through FASAI and a NetPro initiative in Maharashtra are truly commendable. In today's session, Mr. Nilesh will share his journey as an entrepreneur, the challenges that he faced, and how he leverages innovation to create new opportunities in the food and beverage sector. He will also shed light on how you too can transform your passion into career, the role of creativity and innovation in starting a business, and the key opportunities for aspiring entrepreneurs in today's market. So this session will be an interactive one. So feel free to engage and ask questions. Take full advantage of Mr. Nilesh Lele's wealth of knowledge. Here, I'll just make a small announcement that whenever you are having your question, you can please type in the chat box, or please take speaker's permission, and then you can unmute yourself. And the rest of the time, we will request everyone to please be muted yourself. And whenever you want to have a question, then only unmute yourself. So without a further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Nilesh Lele to take over and enlighten us on the incredible opportunities that entrepreneurs and innovation can bring. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nikam, and the Symbiosis Centre for Distance Learning. If I can also have access to share my screen, yeah, I think I have.
Yes, you have, sir.
So, and how much time do I have?
So you can go ahead more than 1 hour, 1.5, and even 2 hours also.
And I'll try to stick to maximum 1 hour,
including
Q&A. And like you suggested, the people who have joined here can put in their questions during the session in the chat box. I'll try to answer it if it is relevant at that time, or if not, then at the end also, probably I'll try to have 15 minutes of Q&A session. Yeah. So thank you very much for inviting, as well as thank you for giving my introduction. And since you have touched upon different topics, I'll tell you why entrepreneurship, or why India needs more entrepreneurs, right? So there's always a ratio of people giving job and people seeking job in a particular economy, and that will keep the overall economy stable. So right now, I think the number stands at around 95 and 5. So 5% job givers or entrepreneurs and 95% are job seekers. We need that ratio to be 793 ideally for us to become a superpower, for us to become the developed nation. Like if you look at the Western world, you'll find a number like that. So the idea is that we need 2% more, two incremental entrepreneurs. So I'm not saying all 100 plus people who are joined here necessarily have to become an entrepreneur. But my aim in today's talk is maybe to create or influence or motivate at least 5 to 10 of you to become an entrepreneur, so that that gap of 2% more entrepreneurs that we need can be filled, so that the others can get jobs, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is, and you'll see in my presentation also, it's predominantly only one slide, and I am more than happy to share the slide as well, that the key to entrepreneurship and to success is innovation. And if we look at history also, you will see that India used to be a large economy, probably contributing 25% to world's GDP in 400, 500 years ago. So what really changed in that 400 years is we saw French Revolution, we saw Industrial Revolution, and so many other innovations that the countries in Europe, the Western Europe, as well as America did, right? So innovation, use of technology, where technology is able to help you achieve more with less. A lot of these things have happened. And so again, if India and what India is planning to do in next 20, 25 years and become a developed nation, become number three soon, and become a superpower, I feel that innovation should be at the back of everybody's mind, and especially at the back of entrepreneurs' mind. And you'll listen to me as to why and how some of these innovations can be made. Okay, so without much further delay, let me get into the key topics that I wanted to share. Sorry. Yeah. So I guess, so I'm assuming most of you are not an entrepreneur right now, but want to become an entrepreneur and want to start their own venture or a startup. I mean, whether it's a micro, small, medium enterprise like an MSME enterprise, whether it's a startup, whether it's a business, basically it's the same thing, right? You're taking different types of resources like people or man, you're taking money, you're taking other infrastructure, other resources, doing some value addition, and then hopefully selling it for more value, right? So that's predominantly what an entrepreneur does. Like you take certain resources. So if you're a manufacturer, you'll take raw material, you'll take packaging material, you'll do some processing, you'll do some value addition, and then you'll sell it at a higher price and make a profit. If you're into service business, you may take human capital or people on board. You may develop some software or some other service, and then you will sell it to your clients, right? So for hopefully for a profit. So that's predominantly what an entrepreneur does, or an entrepreneurship venture, or a business, or a startup really does, right? And there are, and maybe in the Q&A, if anybody has a question, I can answer. But basically, a lot of these words are similar and interchangeable. Though there are technical definitions of a startup or an micro, small, medium enterprise, or a business, but I don't want to get into that at this point in time. So now let's come to, if you want to become an entrepreneur, where should your journey really start? Or why should your journey really start? So the journey should start ideally with some kind of a unique idea or some kind of identification of a problem statement. So now you'll ask me what's a problem statement, or I'd like to give my favorite example of taxi services. So I'm based in Mumbai, and we have a taxi service, what we also call Kali Pili, right? The yellow and the black cabs or the taxis. So prior to Uber and Ola coming into picture, most of us were using the the Kali Pili taxis. But there were certain problems, certain lacunas with the Kali Pili model. What were they? One, you had to go find a taxi. Two, you would not know whether he's going to say yes or no. In many times, and if anybody's from Mumbai or has visited Mumbai, must have faced this thing where the taxi guy refuses. Three, he may take you around the town and overcharge you. Four, if you want to go to the airport tomorrow at 4 a.m. in the morning, want to catch a flight, you're nervous that whether you'll get a taxi or not. And there are many other problem statements that existed in the model prior to the Uber or the Ola coming into picture. So now, what does Uber or an Ola do? You can sit at home, book it online. He comes and picks you up. You know exactly who the driver is. You even get his phone number. So in case you forget something, you can always contact and get his stuff. You know exactly what charges are going to be. You get the ratings. Nowadays, they also have a feature to pre-book the Ola or an Uber in advance, right? So a pretty good definition of a problem statement was made as far as Ola or an Uber is concerned, and a pretty robust solution was provided by these softwares. Okay, and also it was unique. They were first movers, and that helped them take advantage of the gap that existed in the taxi service market, at least in cities like Mumbai or Delhi or the larger cities. Okay, and I will go along giving you different examples, and you will start seeing that most of these entrepreneurs, most of these ventures, where they were able to clearly define a problem statement and come up with a good enough solution. Also, the idea was unique. Let's take another example of Swiggy. It's not that hotels were not delivering to your orders, right? You could still call the hotel, like, okay, send me two orders of pav bhaji, and the Sadhguru's or the other famous pav bhajis restaurants in Mumbai would deliver to you, or even the Subways of the world or the Domino's of the world, they deliver to you, right? So it's not that delivering food to your home was not happening prior to Swiggy or the Zomatos coming into picture. But now what has happened? They have found out that, okay, there's a challenge with the restaurant. They don't know whether to keep two boys or five boys, two delivery boys or five delivery boys. There's every day they're trying to figure out how many delivery boys to have, because if they keep two less and a lot of orders come in, then the order delivery will be delayed and the customer will be unhappy. If they keep more number of delivery boys and the orders are less, then you're unnecessarily paying salary cost, right? So optimizing the cost associated with delivery was a very big challenge with the hotels. And same thing with the people who are ordering. Like typically you want your food within 20-25 minutes or half an hour of ordering, right? So they also had an issue where orders were not being delivered on time, or they were getting delayed. It took 2 hours for some of the restaurants to order. Many times you couldn't order beyond 2-3 kilometers, but today, I mean, Swiggy's and the Zomatos, and there are so many others, are delivering if 15-20 kilometers from the restaurant location also, right? So again, you will see, and I'll touch upon many other examples where you'll see that a pretty good enough problem statement was identified and a good enough solution was given. So at this point in time, you may also ask me, okay, what are some of the problem statements that you see? And you can also introspect yourself. What are some of the problem statements you see around you? So just to highlight some non-food examples also, like I think climate change is a problem statement we are seeing. Maybe plastic waste is another problem statement that we are facing. Probably water, especially drinking water, could be another problem statement that we'll see in next 10 years or so. Food security. Today, India stands at around 140 crore. World stands at around 800 crore people. It's expected to cross 900 crore. So another 100 crore people are going to get added to this planet in next 20 to 30 years. So who's going to feed those 100 additional 100 crore and existing 800 crore? So food security, food safety, and I'm assuming most of you are interested in food. So these are some of the problem statements that I feel you could address. I'll give you another example where I personally don't see a problem statement, and I always experience many startups, especially in the food. They walk up to me and they say, I want to set up something in spices like masala, right? So I tell them, okay, what is the problem statement that you have identified? Because I know there are more than 5,200 masala brands that are currently operational in India. So why does India really need 5,201st masala brand? Or have you identified a problem that these 5,200 are not able to address? If not, then you're going to enter into a very highly competitive kind of a situation. There will be a price war, and it will be what I call a red ocean, where everybody's killing each other and there's blood everywhere, right? As against that, you want to be in a business which is a blue ocean, and there's a very beautiful book written called Blue Ocean Strategy. So you need to read that. So the couple of examples I gave you where the Ola Ubers or the Swiggy Zomatos of the world, they were the blue ocean, or they used the blue ocean strategy where they created their own market, they created their own business model, and they were able to be the only providers in that kind of a space, right? But if you get into a market where already there are 5,200 masala manufacturers and you become the 5,201st, then firstly, you have not identified a problem statement. Secondly, you're going to enter into a highly competitive, cutthroat kind of a situation. Of course, that doesn't mean you should not get into masala manufacturing. I still think there are certain problem statements, but before I explain what problem statements I see or potentially there could be, I will pose a question back to the audience as to which is the brand typically you consume for pav bhaji. And almost all of you will answer that pav bhaji masala that we buy is from Everest. So if I ask you that, do you have a problem that you face with regards to Everest pav bhaji masala? I think 9 out of 10 are going to say no, we don't have a problem. So if tomorrow I launch a brand and I come up with a pav bhaji masala, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to fail because I'm not going to be able to compete with the Everests of or the Badshahs or the MDHs of the world. Secondly, the customer, I'm not going to be able to attract the customer because I've not identified a problem. The customer doesn't have a problem with the current pav bhaji masala in the market. So then where could be the opportunity really, right? So the opportunity could be that the pack size could be different, right? That I can come up with sachet packings, I can come up with small packings, or my product quality is better, or my pricing is lower, or I'm playing in a different geography, or I'm having a different range of masalas. Like I live in Mumbai and North Maharashtra or Khandesh area, they have typical styles of masalas and they are not easily available in Mumbai or Pune. So I might try to cater to the taste buds of people who like the Khandesh type of masalas or the Vidarbha or could be anywhere else in India. That specific type of masala blends or are the ones that I would like to introduce in market rather than introducing the pav bhajis and the choles or the other commonly available and the market share which is predominantly with the big three, four, five players, right? So I hope you have understood and why I've spent almost 10 minutes on this thing because this is the most important aspect of how successful you will be as a venture, right? If you have not added, and I can give you from my own example also that when and ma'am did mention about Exelon Basket. So the marquee product of Exelon Basket was Jeera Masala, the soda that we get. When I entered the market, I thought there are not too many players, but as soon as I entered, I realized that there are thousands of players who are manufacturing Jeera Masala soda. So I had to figure out my way of distinguishing how I'm going to distinguish. And that's precisely why the second brand that I launched was predominantly in fruit wines, where there are hardly 4 or 5 players who are actually making fruit wines, right? So these are wines made from non grapes. So the mango and jackfruit and other types. So these fruits are difficult to make wines. The technology is slightly difficult. So I identified a problem statement, and I also entered into a market or into a venture where what I call there is a barrier to enter, right? So if there are very low barrier to enter, then anybody can enter, right? So you want to be in a market or you want to have a business which has barriers to enter. I'm not saying high necessarily high barriers to enter, but at least certain amount of barrier to enter so that anybody and everybody need not enter, cannot enter it. Secondly, you should ideally have identified some of the problem statements. So I'll throw out few more problem statements. Like everybody is now becoming conscious, so they want healthy and tasty food. They want very less minimally processed food. They want foods without preservatives or without different additives. So these are some of the problem statements that you see in the in the current scenario, especially in the food industry. And you can put it in the chat box if anybody wants me to give non-food industry examples also. But I'm just throwing out some of these examples, and you need to observe what are the problem statements that you are facing on a day-to-day basis. For example, traffic is a problem that you might be facing, or another beautiful innovation I saw was, the umbrellas that we open, the way we open is, you open it up. So but if you're sitting inside the car or you're sitting inside an auto, it's very difficult to close that umbrella while getting in. So someone has designed an umbrella which closes upside down, right? So it easily slides down and you're easily able to close it and go inside. So I think that's a brilliant innovation that someone has made by changing the design of umbrella. So you have to be observant to figure out what are the problem statements, and you have to be observant to figure out a good enough solution. Okay, so I'll pause here for a second. I don't know if there are any yeah, in the chat box. Yeah, heart attack is rising in young masses. So correct. So that is a problem statement. So you could get into consulting where you are trying to consult the young people to eat healthy, to eat right. At the same time, you may come up with certain solutions. I mean, there could be some prevention things, or there could be some cure things. So pharma is another industry, healthcare or nutraceutical is another industry where nutraceutical is basically food, and then food acts like a medicine. So you have health supplements, you have your vitamins, your minerals, your proteins, and so many other things which will actually keep you healthy. So there are obviously a lot of things that you could do, and like I said, observe around you, which identify a problem statement and come out with a good enough solution, right? So that's how you will start. And if anybody in the Q&A session also, we can have more discussion as to a particular idea that you may have, or you want to pursue, right? So let me keep moving. So that's the starting point. Okay, and again, you have to understand that if you don't do this, you have not worked on this. And the spices example I give you, and I can rattle out hundreds of example where if the idea is not unique, if the problem statement has not been identified, you will be in trouble. Another example I can give you is what we call packaged drinking water or the mineral water, right? Barrier to enter, very low. As long as you have 15, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs, you can enter the market. You can make the bottles like Bisleri or the Baileys or the Kinleys of the world and start selling it, right? So barrier to enter, very less. Uniqueness, almost zero. So that if you get into it, you're going to be in a highly competitive market. But again, there you have started seeing a lot of innovation or a lot of differentiation. Like you have mineral water, the likes of Himalaya or few other brands. There are some brands that are come with Kangen water or alkaline water. Then there is something called black water or something. Then volcano water. So many other things. So unless you are differentiating yourself and have identified that okay, this is unique, this is a problem statement, my market is looking, there is a market and they are ready to pay for it, then it is the right thing to do. And that is how I dive into the second point, that, okay, your idea might be unique, you have identified a problem statement, but if there's no market or if there's no need at this point in time, again, you'll be in trouble. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I remember my parents got their first cell phone, the mobile phone, in late 90s, I think 99 or 2000. And back then, of course, the phones were also expensive, but you had to pay even for incoming. So outgoing, obviously, you paid, but incoming was also paid, and it used to cost you almost 16 rupees a minute. So if some of them are from my generation, my age group, would agree with me, but some of you, if you're younger, you would be like amazed to know that even incoming you had to pay, and you had to pay 16 rupees a minute, which I would put it as almost 100 rupees a minute. So just think about it. You're paying 100 rupees a minute for incoming, and for outgoing also you're paying 100 rupees a minute, right? So back then, that's why nobody had many cell phones. And even if you had a cell phone, who are you really going to call? Because there's nobody else who had a cell phone. Everybody had back then what we I think some of you may still have, called landlines. And but who's going to pick up the landline during the day? Nobody's home. So having a cell phone was kind of what I would call a nice to have back then, and not a must have, right? So you ideally want to be in a situation where your product or a service is a must have and not just nice to have. Okay, so cell phone 20 years back, 25 years back was a nice to have. But today, if I say I don't have a cell phone, people will ridicule me. Not just cell phones, you must have a smartphone with all the apps, the WhatsApps, and all the Instagrams of the world, right? So that same nice to have has become a must have. So again, nothing wrong in having a product or a service or a business which is nice to have, but it needs to become a must have in next 3, 5, 10 years, right? So another example is your electric vehicles, which today I think is nice to have, but probably in 5, 10 years, it will become a must have. Okay. So nothing wrong in being nice to have, but ideally you want to be in a must have. And Hindi pictures have always taught us roti, kapda, or makan, right? These are the must haves. And obviously, without makan, and unfortunately, in Mumbai, people had shown us that even without makan, people can survive. With one or two pairs of clothes, people can survive. But without food, definitely they cannot survive. So even in roti, kapda, makan, roti is definitely the must have of in terms of the requirement. Okay, so understand this concept of must have to nice and nice to have. Again, I will repeat that nothing wrong in being in nice to have, but hopefully next you have the vision, or you have the conviction that in next 3, 5 years it will become a must have, right? So you want to be in a business which is a must have. So these 2 points. Please make sure you have worked hard enough to identify before you jump into any product. I will detour a little bit here, because I also work with a lot of startups and help them raise funds. And before onboarding any startup, I always ask 5 questions about that startup. Right. First is, are they the first movers? Is there any innovation? Have they defined a problem statement? And so on and so forth. Second is, I ask them, or I judge whether they can maintain the competitive advantage. So what does that mean? That, okay, you are a first mover, you have some solution, but whether you'll always remain the first, the leader, right? And I'll give you an example that when I started being on social networks, right, like the Facebooks of the world, my first thing was what was called Orkut back then. And majority of the Indians in the late 90s and early 2000s were on this social networking site called Orkut, primarily because the pages used to load much faster than the Facebook. But today, Orkut does not exist. So even though they were first mover, they came first before Facebook. Facebook was actually the seventh social networking site. But even though they were the first movers, they were not able to maintain the competitive advantage. And today, your Orkut does not exist. Was bought by MSN, was shut down. Whereas Facebook kept evolving, and still exists and is pretty popular. Same thing in emails. My generation people will remember most of us would have our first email address either a Hotmail or a Yahoo or a Rediff mail, right? But today, even though I do have my Hotmail address, I barely use it because we all moved to Gmail. We all and Gmail and Google kept giving us so many things. You have the Google Drive, the Google Meet, and so many new features. So even though they were not the first movers, they became the industry leader and they kept maintaining their competitive advantage, right? So this is another important thing that you need to think. So something different, innovation, first mover, that can also be done through patents. So you can be able to protect that and maintain your competitive advantage. So that was the second one. Third one is whether the model is scalable. So some of the examples I've given you so far are all scalable models. Once I have a technology ready, I launch my Uber model in Mumbai. It stabilizes. I can launch everywhere in the world. So it's highly scalable. The Ubers, the Olas, the Oyos, the Swiggies, the Zomatos of the world, you will observe are all scalable model. So that's point number three. Point number four is whether the business will actually make money, and point number five, whether the team can make money. So these are the five things I assess in any startup before working with them to get them funding. And I also tell all the startups, and I'm telling you guys also, to please make sure you introspect whatever idea, whatever business or you're already doing or you want to do, or what is your answer to these five questions, right? Because the investors typically look at these five questions. And why it is important for you, because you are the first investor in your own business. You are going to invest your money, of course, but your time and your effort as well. So it's very, very important to think like an investor. Think like, is this business really going to make money? Is my team strong enough, competent enough to make money? Is this a scalable model? Can I make it really big? Can I maintain the competitive advantage? And is it really what the world needs? Is there a problem statement I've identified? And so on and so forth. Okay. So, and if anybody wants, maybe in the Q&A or maybe in the chat box, I'll again put down these 5 points. But I want you to have that kind of a mindset before you venture into any business, right? Think like an investor because you are the investor, the first investor in your business. So moving on, coming back to the slides. So the third most important, the third important component is finance. And obviously you need money to run a business. And typically there are two ways how you can get finance. There are many more, but broad two ways are, one is through the banks or through debt or loans, right? The words basically mean the same thing. So you can go to a bank, put up your proposal and get funding from the bank, right? So, and I can tell you, all banks are flush with money. They're looking for good proposals, even though they need not think the way I've described so far. They have different way of looking at it. But bottom line remains the same: whether the team can make money and whether the project can make money. That's predominantly what the two things that banks look. Of course, they look it through ratios and different things, but primarily they're looking at these two key aspects. So you can borrow money from the bank or even from your friends, family. And that's the one broad way of raising money. And the second broad way of raising money, and I'm assuming most of you have seen Shark Tank, so it has made my life easy to explain that you can raise it through an equity investor. So it could be an angel investor or a high net worth individual or a VC fund who will put in money into your business, take a certain amount of equity in return. And like I said, I do this on a regular basis. And again, the investors, there are hundreds and thousands of investors who are looking to fund. Unfortunately, they are not finding good enough startups because of some of these things that we have discussed so far, and some of the things that I'm going to talk later. That either they're a Me Too kind of a product, they don't have their business model worked out, they're working in a nice to have kind of an thing. Model is not scalable sometimes, and I've seen, and you can Google and figure out why startups fail, and you'll be amazed to see that in even in top 5 reasons, one of the reason is that it's a wrong what we call a product market fit. So you have a product, and then you have a market, but the product does not fit a market, right? So there's a product market fitment is wrong. So it's like, you have a circular hole, and then you're trying to put a square manhole onto it, right? So that's kind of a thing. So you have a lock and you have a key, but the key does not open the lock. So that is one of the key reasons why a lot of startups also fail, right? So they have not identified the market, they have not identified whether there's a need, and they have just entered into the market. So again, coming back, so finance, I can tell you, it's difficult. Yes, raising money, getting investor money is difficult. I won't lie. I won't say it's very easy. It's definitely difficult, but it is definitely not the most difficult or important thing on this slide. And I'll come to the most critical component on this slide. But don't pull yourself back thinking that, "Arey, paisa kahan se laun? Who will help me? Who will fund me?" If some of the things that we have discussed so far, if 50, 60, 70% of them are there in your overall business idea, I can assure you there will be people who will fund you, either the banks or the investors or your friends or your family or whoever, right? So don't pull yourself back saying पैसा कहाँ से लाओ. No, if पैसा तो आ जाएगा अगर आपका प्रोडक्ट अच्छा है, बिजनेस अच्छा है, पैसा आ जाएगा. But if it is not good, then तो पैसा नहीं आएगा. Okay, so don't think that it's easy. I'm not saying it is easy. It's difficult only, but it's not super difficult if you have some of the things that we have already discussed sorted out. Next, we move on to the important component, which is the technology. And this is something that we as Indians really need to focus on. And technology, again, I talk from two aspects. One is the IT technology, the information technology, right? So what we are using even right now, this is this kind of a technology. Today, there are so many other things, like Instagram is a very important tool for a lot of brands where they do activations on Instagram. They do so many reels and everything on Instagram, generate interest, take them to their website, which could be made using a Shopify kind of a portal. People place order, make payments through Razor Pay, and boom, get the order, and they deliver through different delivery agencies like Shiprocket or VFast or Dunzo, right? So this kind of a technology, the IT technology, where UPI has become prevalent, internet, even WhatsApp. I mean, you can run your whole business on WhatsApp using the WhatsApp business login, where you can have your brochure, you can generate orders, you can accept payments. Everything can be done even using WhatsApp, right? So that's one set of technology that you should use, because I always say technology is a tool where you can do achieve more with less, right? So once you have a tool, basically your machine or automation, basically you're achieving more with less, right? So please definitely take use of IT technology. And the second set of technology could be the core to a particular business that you're doing. So since our theme has been food, I can tell you, like, frozen is a technology, retort is a technology, yeah, HPP, high pressure processing, is a technology. So there are so many novel technologies that are irradiation is a technology. So there are so many other novel technologies that are also available that can be used as a food entrepreneur, right? And same thing will apply to other industries also, like electric vehicle is the technology. So please do make use of this technology. This technology can also be a barrier, right? You have the technology, nobody else has that. So that will again play a role of barrier, which is again very important for you to become very, very super successful, right? So if there are low barriers, then you are attracting competition very easily. If there are high barriers, and I'm talking about high barrier to enter, okay, to enter a business. And that's why you will see the Adanis and the Ambanis of the world, they all enter into businesses which have high barrier to enter. Probably you and I don't know if there's anybody here, but at least I know for sure that I cannot get into the ports or the airports or airlines or some of these industry, because there's a high barrier, at least as far as capital is concerned, is a barrier for me at least to enter into of these things, right? So that is another key reason, and that's why barrier to enter, you have to keep that at the back of your mind, and technology can play a role of creating that barrier. You can patent your technology, and stop others from entering. So I have another friend, his brand is called Pavak, which is a jaggery brand. He makes cubes. Of course, there are now many others who have come in, but he has technology. He has a patent on the technology, and he has a process and product patent. So he has patent on a 12-gram cube with that bottle, and also the process of manufacturing where he makes chemical free, sulfur free kind of jaggery. So now you'll ask me, so what? So what happened is one of the biggest chains of supermarkets had multiple brands selling there. So he showed them the his patent, and he was able to restrict other brands from entering into the supermarket and have his kind of his monopoly in that supermarket. Of course, in small retails, it's very difficult. You cannot really go to each and every retail and show, listen, this brand is infringing my patent. But at least if you can get into a big giant retail store like a Reliance or a DMart and prove to them that you have the patent and they're breaching the patent if they keep the product of some other brands, then that patent can play a big role in stopping others from entering, not necessarily entering the business, but at least from entering into that supermarket chain, right? So please look at technology very carefully, and you can, like I said, you can also use it as a barrier for others to enter. Okay, so I'll pause here since we have gone through four of the eight building blocks of the journey. I'll pause here to just see if there are any questions or comments or anything at this point in time. If not, then I'll keep moving on. So someone has asked, I think Mr. Ramesh has asked that he has an idea of building a fitness band, filed it for MSME Idea Hackathon, and will someone fund this idea, right? So there are two, 3 points here. I think the idea is very good, and I have another friend of mine who does not similar, but has some concept, has some similarity to this concept. So his brand is called Nadi Tarangini, and so he has a wearable, and it is able to capture the nadi and capture the data of your nadi. If you remember the Vaidyas in who practice Ayurveda, generally they do that where they check your what we call nadi, right? We have the three, I think, Vata, Kapha, and Pitta. So they will check that, and based on that, they can do certain prescriptions. So he does that. So here there are a couple of things you will have to do that you will have to do. Firstly, you'll need to have data to support. So he has almost 1 lakh uh, data points. I don't want to call patients, let's say, or neither customers, but he has tested it on almost 1 lakh people, collected the data, and he's able to predict that if certain nadi exists, what are certain uh, features or certain you know characteristics that person may have in terms of his health. So this idea definitely is there, and I think it's a great idea. And there are many other wearables or many other such fitness bands that are coming. I think there's a glucose meter. I think it's launched by Abbott, who tracks your glucose throughout on a regular basis, right? So it's a great idea. The second part of your question is typically investors don't fund at the idea level. Okay, so there are stages that you go through while building a business. And you can look it up. It's also called TRLs, the technology readiness level. So going from TRL 1 to TRL 9 is basically the journey that you have if you're a typical technology driven guy, right? I mean, Jira soda, nobody does a TRL 1 to TRL 9. I just buy the machinery, I just buy the formulation, and just make bottles and start selling it, right? So this whole TRL thing didn't come into picture. But if you're developing a technology, then it comes into picture. And typically you'll start with an idea, then you'll have like a prototype, then you'll have a working prototype, then you'll have a marketable prototype, and then you will go to the market, right? So in that journey where you are still not commercial, or what is called traction, where you don't have paying customers, up until that point, typically investors don't invest. The reason is that you and me both get around 50,000 thoughts every day. Probably, at least for me, I can vouch that I think 500 of those are ideas, right, out of those 50,000. And 50 of those could be really having good potential. And I get that every day. But can I really make a business model out of it? Will an investor really invest in it? The answer is no, right? And that is why you have these whole MSME hackathons or other government agencies like BIRAC under DBT, which is Department of Biotechnology, then DSTs, MSME ministries are running at institute level. Smart in the hackathons are being run. So a lot of these government initiatives are going to help you to reach a level where at least you have the product and you have traction, or you have buying customers, paying customers. Once you have that, then investors will jump in. It's very unlikely that at an idea stage an investor will jump in unless that idea is very, very innovative, you have a track record, and the investor believes in you. If those things do not exist, then it is very unlikely, because like I said, even I have get five good ideas every day, but will the investor really invest in it? No, he'll be like, you make the product, you sell it, show me people buying it, and I'll invest in you. Not just purely that, array, I think I can make a so and so thing because of which people will always remain thin. They will not become fat. He's like, okay, fine. You make the product, prove it on 100 customers, prove that people are buying it again and again, and I'll give you the money, right? So that's that's my small take on question that you had, and all of a sudden questions are popping up. So let me quickly address at least two or three, and then we can move. The next is how to develop attitude of entrepreneurship among students. I think entrepreneurship attitude sometimes have to has most of the times has to come from inside, right? It cannot you cannot really inculcate that, hey, listen, from tomorrow you have to become an entrepreneur. ऐसा हो नहीं सकता है. It has, that feeling has to come from inside, because you need to be passionate. Like even today, uh, I'm running two, three companies, and I'm still passionate about being on this call, right? So you cannot necessarily instill, but yes, if you create an ecosystem, which has been happening through the AICT's initiative, like what we are doing here today is also, I think, under the Innovation Cell initiative. So more and more such initiatives happen. Probably it will take one generation, probably 5, 10 years, 20 years, because you also need to understand that people are parents are sending their kids to school or college to get educated and to get a job. So the parents mindset also has to change, that okay, it's okay for my son to become an entrepreneur. If so it may take 10 years where entrepreneurship becomes a much more accepted kind of an option. Like even jokingly I'm saying, but it happens that people with government job will find wives more easy. The finding a wife is much more easier if you have a government job than in being a startup founder, right? So that's the unfortunate story of our society right now, but it will change. It will change in another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, where and it is happening. The ecosystem is there, money is coming in, the startup India strategy is in place. So a lot of these things are there. And I feel in another 10 years, you'll start seeing a lot more people. Like my son is 13 and he's talking about becoming an entrepreneur. He's talking about not even going for undergraduate. He's like, what if I stop studying after 12th grade? I'm like, fine. As long as you are able to start a startup and you think going for college is not important, getting a bachelor's degree is not important, I'll support it. But you make sure that you have some fallback for it, right? So as a child also, his mindset is different. As a parent also, my mindset is different. And but I don't think as a child my mindset was like that, neither my parents mindset was like that, right? So things are changing. We are and it will happen. Then okay, Khushbu, interior brand, okay, specific things will come to it. Advisable to partner with other startups. Okay. Okay. I think most of the questions, and like I said, we'll have Q&A right at the end. So let me quickly go back and finish the other four things that are remaining. Okay. So moving on, the next important topic is human capital, which previously we used to call manpower or employees or so on and so forth. No, now in today's world, we need to start looking at it as a capital, because capital is something that is scarce, right? That is not easily available. And manpower, and especially good manpower, motivated manpower, people who will work hard, unfortunately has become scarce for various reasons, right or wrong. Gone are the days like we used to see in the movies that someone starts working for some employer, right? You know, the heroine ka baap, and then he's a driver and he works as a driver for 30 years for the same guy, or 40 years for the same guy. Gone are those days. I mean, if even at my end, I see if someone works for me 2 years or 3 years, I'm more than happy. I celebrate. That means I've been a good boss, I think, right? So we have to really nurture, motivate, sometimes make sure their goals are aligned to our goals, the company's goals. So you have to look at your employees, and especially if you're in a service business, for example, the likes of a TCS or for that matter, even Swiggy or Zomato, if you really think about it, they're in the service business. So their drivers, their riders are their human capital. And we have seen a lot of bad behavior on their part is causing a big problem on their brand, right? We have those viral videos about the Swiggy riders eating food, or Uber drivers doing a lot of wrong things. So we have to be very, very careful. Human capital, we have to look at your employees as a capital. We have to nurture, we have to uh, take care of them. And so that if you like, Harsh Mariwala ji the chairman of Marico always says that if I take care of my employees, the employees will take care of my company, right? So that is the mindset that you need to have going forward as an entrepreneur. Next comes supply chain, and this becomes very, very important in case you are in a manufacturing kind of a business, right? So what does supply chain really mean? That let's say I'm a manufacturer of bakery products, right, or snacks or whatever. So I will be buying raw material, packaging material. So those are called backward linkage. I'll make the product and I'll sell it to the market. That's called forward linkage. So this whole thing is supply chain. Now, why this is important? Because in India, a lot of raw material is regional and seasonal. So let's say mango processing, right? So we all know mangoes, at least in Maharashtra, are typically grown in Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg. Some of the southern states have it. So mango processing, also the mangoes are available maybe 2 or 3 months in the year. So they're regional and seasonal. Cashew nuts, regional, seasonal. Sugarcane, or you take anything, wheat, rice, anything, you'll observe that it is regional and seasonal. So understanding the supply chain on the what we call backward linkage is very, very important. At the same time, supply chain on the forward linkage. So I made the product, now I'll have a stockist, have a distributor, and the end delivery, what we also call the last mile delivery, right? So that whole thing has to be well managed. And you'll see in India, supply chain is very inefficient compared to the developed countries. And if you're buying something for 100 rupees, I can assure you that almost 23 rupees out of that is going in the supply chain, be it, be it in transportation, be it in storage, backward linkage, forward linkage, all of those things put together is 23%. In the US or the Western Europe, it's only 7%. So there's a 16% inefficiency in Western world versus India. Wherever there's inefficiency, wherever there's a problem, I love it because I see an opportunity. So that 16% inefficiency is an opportunity. And that's why you'll observe that a lot of startups, and I have already taken some of the names, I'll take few more names, are actually in the space of supply chain. Even the Swiggies and the Zomatos are in the supply chain. They're doing the last mile deliveries. A lot of these quick comms, right? The Blinkits, the Zeptos, the Swiggy Instamarts, again in the supply chain. The Dunzos of the world, the VFast, the Ship Rockets of the world, again in the supply chain. The Waycools of the world, again in the supply chain. Even Big Basket, Flipkart, Amazon, if you really observe, their model is into supply chain, right? So lot of these things, a lot of the startups have actually come in supply chain, predominantly because I feel their 16% inefficiency was something that they're trying to tap. I'm not saying it's very easy, but they're trying to exploit and add value by making it much more efficient, right? So supply chain is important, it's inefficient, and that is why there are opportunities there. So you can become a startup in supply chain. There are so many of these IoTs and Internet of Things, or even RFID kind of products. There's so many other products that are now entering into market where they're trying to address the issues faced by the supply chain. Next, which probably and according to me is the most critical. All are critical because because I always say this is like a circuit, like an electric circuit. So if you switch on the light, the switch, and the bulb lights on, it's working because each and every component is working. But if it doesn't work, it could be because of anything, because the bulb has gone bad, the filament is broken, or the switch is gone off, or the wire is broken, or the wire is not uh, tightened properly, or it's cut somewhere. So it could be any reason. So for the circuit not to work, or rather the circuit to work, each and every component has to work. And similarly, on this slide, for you to be successful, each and every component has to work, right? So you cannot fail in any of these things. But the most critical, according to me, is the sales and marketing part. And why most of the startups they fail, or they are not able to achieve the success they should have, is predominantly because of something that went wrong in the sales and marketing piece. Let us first understand, since there are two different words, there are two different functions, let us understand the difference. So marketing is something that you do so that people become aware about your product. So predominantly through advertisements is what you do your marketing. So you may put up a holding, or you may take a brand ambassador, like you may take Virat Kohli and market 2 or you may do certain TV advertisements, jingles, radio, Red FM, things like that, right? So through marketing you have made people aware about your product. Through advertisement you have made people aware of your product, and then now because the product is known, people go and buy it, and that's where the sales happen. So I'll give you a classic example, couple of them, where you'll realize that these are two different roles, functions, two different departments. So the classic example is car companies. So the let's say Maruti, right? Right now they have that whole campaign for the Maruti Swift going on, the Swifting, right? They text each other and they're like, "Are you ready for Swifting?" So that's the whole marketing campaign. So through advertisement, they're creating an interest. Now, once that interest is created, that person goes to the showroom, and who you meet there is not the marketing guy; he's the sales guy. His job is, now that the person has come, you have to close it, because in the whole journey of a customer also there are various steps, and I don't remember all of them top of my head, but right from making them aware, to creating interest, to creating intent, to understanding all the features, to actually purchasing, that's a whole journey that you go through. So the first few pieces are done by the marketing guys. Once the intent is there, all the way up to the purchase is done by the sales guy, right? So the sales guys are very, very smart. In once, if a customer comes into the showroom, their aim is to make sure that he buys and he goes, right? So he'll not let you go. He'll be like, "Oh, this is the best. I'll throw in another 10,000 rupees discount. I'll give you free insurance. I'll give you some accessories. I'll do this. I'll do that. Uh, and if you buy it today, I'll give you another 5,000, but tomorrow this offer will not be available." So he has all those sales tactics to pressurize you to purchase, right? Because you're already coming with the intent. Whereas the marketing guys will play smart. Their strategy will be different. They'll talk about this car gives 22 kilometers per liter. It can go 0 to 100 in 6 seconds and things like that, right? So that's the marketing guy's role, to create interest through their campaigns. Like I always say, I always give an example of fog. Like what amazing marketing campaigns they run. They don't have a brand ambassador, but they have such amazing campaigns of kya chal raha hai, fog chal raha hai, and like, so many other different marketing that they do. And once the marketing is done, customer goes to the showroom or to the shop, the sales is easily closed. So this is the differentiation between the two things, and why brands fail, or why any entrepreneurship venture fails, is because they may have a great product, great idea, great solution, have money in hand, but they are not able to sell. They are not able to market their products. So this is a specialized role. Ideally, on your core team, you should have a chief marketing officer, or like a sales, really hardcore sales guy, for you to really be very, very successful, right? So that is why I say that this is a critical, because if you're in a product, especially what we call FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, your food, your cosmetics, your other things, right? Whatever you go and buy from the kirana or the retail shop, you need to have 80% repeat customer. People have to come back and buy your product and your product and your product. That happens typically. Let's say toothpaste. I can guarantee you, or you and me use the same toothpaste for at least 5, 10, 20 years that we remember, right? We use the same toothpaste. Typically, we drink the same uh, juice, same beverage, certain products that we always buy the same thing. So you need to have at least 80% repeat customers for you to sustain, if you are especially if you are an FMCG. Of course, others also, like automobiles also you want, but the challenge with automobile is they are not fast moving consumer good, right? You typically buy a car every 5 years or every 10 years, or your chasma you may buy every 3 years or 4 years, right? So these are not fast moving goods, but other fast moving consumer goods, you need to have at least 70-80% repeat customers. Of course, in non-fast moving also you want to have repeat customers. That means they are happy, they are getting value for money, and they're coming back to you, right? So these are some of the things that you need to take care as far as sales and marketing of your product is concerned. And finally, we'll come to the regulatory compliance. And since food is our focus, uh, and almost every business is regulated. Food obviously is regulated by your FSSAI, Food Safety Standards Authority of India. Even pharma is regulated. All the other businesses slowly, steadily, like the EV regulation is out, drones regulations is out. So almost every industry is regulated. And in fact, you should look at a regulatory compliance or regulations as your buddy, right? You understand it, someone else doesn't understand it, so that can again work as a barrier. I'll give a simple example, since we are focusing on food, and someone did mention about health and nutraceuticals. So prior to FSSAI going into force on 5th August 2011, we had certain other regulations in place for food, right? There was prevention of food adulteration, there was food products order, and another 6. So total 8 were abolished, and FSSAI came into picture. So FSSAI in 2016 has now come out with the nutraceutical regulation. And in that nutraceutical regulation, they have even included 200 botanicals like ashwagandha and so many other tulsi and so many other botanicals that can actually be added into your nutraceutical. So if you have the knowledge of the regulation, you can actually you can use it to your own advantage and design, develop products which can again make you stand out, will also play a role of barrier. So don't look at regulatory compliance as a hurdle. You actually look it as something that can actually help you to grow your business further. Okay, so these are, and there could be few more, but these are some of the key areas that you should map out. You sit down, put it on paper, and figure out that, okay, before I start, why am I going to start a business? Is it really needed? Is there a problem statement? How I can solve it? Who will buy my product? Is there a market? Is there a nice to have, must have? Who will fund me? Like someone asked me, and I gave you examples that till you have traction, from idea all the way to traction, generally you may want to go for what are called grants from different government agencies, state and center. Once you have traction, even the banks will come in, investors will come in, and money is available. Use technology, nurture your employees, focus on supply chain. Maybe you supply chain could be the core of your business. Like I rattled out so many names which are actually in supply chain. Focus on sales marketing. Have someone expert in sales and marketing as part of your founding team, if possible. If not, then at least part of your core team. And make sure if you are in a regulatory business, a regulatory industry, then you follow the regulations and obviously look at the regulations as something which will actually help you to grow faster. Okay. So with this, I come to the end, and like I said, this is like an electric circuit, but at the same time, this we can also give another example of this is like an orchestra where all the musicians have to function well for the orchestra to sound better, right? If one or two also are not playing properly, the whole orchestra will not sound good, right? So same thing applies here. Nothing is more important or less important. Everything is important. Everything is critical because, like we say, the strength of the chain is as strong as the weakest link. So the weakest link is going to be your strength, but at the same time, if I have to pinpoint what is the biggest challenge that most of the startups face, then it is the sales and marketing, because obviously you have a good idea, you all come from a technical background, you may have some technology in place, you may have identified a market, have a good founding team and core team, but everything is right. But typically, because if you don't have a good product, it doesn't matter where the other things, right? So I'm going to assume that you have done all your base work properly, and it's really where sales and marketing comes into picture, where majority of the startups, they either struggle or they fail. Okay, so with this, thank you very much, and I would like to stop, and these are my coordinates if anybody wants to reach out to me. The best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn also, or through WhatsApp. That's the best way to reach out to me. And again, I would like to thank Symbiosis College for giving me this opportunity for and talking to all of you. So I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Here we will request all participants that those who want to ask a question, one, either you can type it in the chat box or you can just raise your hand so that we can unmute you and you can talk to someone.
So I think there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So let me take them.
Yes.
So someone is saying that is it advisable to partner with other startups for tech or other solutions? Yes, definitely. That's a good idea. Like I always believe that you do what you're good at and outsource what you are not good at, or do what your core is and you outsource it. And I'll give you example, slightly of the track example, but you have started seeing almost all companies are now outsourcing their housekeeping and other non-core, right? Like even the watchman services. So if you're a society, you must have seen that they outsourced it to the BVGs of the group or the crystals of the group, or there could be small things. So even in factories, you'll see that, okay, my core is to manufacture. I don't want to handle the other non-core employees, right? So I will outsource it. So the if that is happening, definitely you should tie up with other partners also. Yeah. Someone mentions that, okay, apart from Shark Tank, what are the other sources to find investors? So I think I had a link to it. You can Google it. You'll find a list of, you Google for angel investors or things like that. And a lot of them are very active on LinkedIn. There are many different programs that keep happening, or you can reach out to me. And it is not only investors. Just because you have a list of investors doesn't mean that you will be able to track them. You'll have to build that relationship. You'll have to reach. The other thing you can do is, and I forgot to mention that you can become part of certain incubation centers. And there are more than 70 Atal incubation centers. I think Symbiosis also at the university level has an incubation center. So you reach out to them, you become part of the incubation center, or at least get onto their mailing list, and you will be able to get get these flyers, like different incubators. They keep doing what they sometimes call fireside chat. They bring in 4 or 5 investors and have a panel discussion. So slowly, steadily, uh, you will have to. Sorry. you will have to build your network of investors as well. Okay, just 1 second. So someone asked, if you ask start a new startup today, what it will be. So I will tell you. I'll quickly. I mentioned that one of my, of course, I have been doing consulting, but from consulting I went to, because consulting was not scalable. Like everybody wanted my time. I had only 24 hours and 7 days a week. So it reached a point where I was blocked every day, right? So I couldn't scale it up. So that's why I went into the soda manufacturing, where I thought, okay, one Nilesh Lele, one factory, one Nilesh Lele can have 100 factories. Fine. But there I did not really have a differentiator. It was a me too product, and so I realized I need to have some differentiator, and that's where I also ventured into fruit wines, which had some differentiator and all that. But again, scalability was a challenge. If it is a manufacturing, scalability will always remain the challenge, and that's why the startup that I'm currently working on is food tech Pathshala, which is a e-learning like a Coursera or a Udemy. So there are recorded courses, like self-paced. So once the course is up there, people, even while I'm sleeping, are paying, are signing up and paying for course. So that is something that I learned throughout my journey, that okay, you have to be a differentiator, like some differentiation has to be there from your peers. Secondly, it has to be a scalable model. So that's my answer. First answer, that okay, that is why I'm working on Food Tech Pathshala for last year and a half, based on my earlier journey where I realized that I need a scalable model. I need the Swiggies and the Zomatos or the Oyos of the world. And like I said, there are so many other ideas, and you may have a different view towards a problem. I may have a different view towards a problem. So I may not really be able to answer that what I can start, but I think I've given you ample examples, and it is not my, it should not be my dream or my idea that you need to pick. We all get, like I said, 50,000 thoughts every day, probably 10, 20, 500 ideas every day. So you figure out what could be the best thing. And based on whatever we discussed today, you answer the questions and then see, okay, is the problem statement real? Is there a need? Is it nice to have, must have? How big is the problem statement? Are there barriers to enter? Can I maintain the competitive advantage? Do I have a good team that can run it properly? Is there a business model I can convert? Just an idea doesn't necessarily make it a model, right? So can a business model be made out of it? Means, can I actually make money by doing this? So all these things you answer, and then I'm sure you will find, uh, ask all these questions to yourself, and I'm sure you'll find answers to it. Yeah. So I think one last question that I've not answered is, someone has a interior yeah, and how easy it is to get an investor. So like and I'll repeat it quickly. I told you that 5 points, differentiator. Can you maintain that scalability and all that? So if I look at your thing, scalability is a challenge, a little bit of a challenge, I feel. And that's why the paper fries of the world will get funding, and not maybe one, or like a single project, like a single team interior designer, the way I look at it. Secondly, whether the team will make money, I'm assuming yes. Whether the business will make money, I am assuming yes. But then investor will come in if you're able to show the differentiator. Like, how are you different? How is your interior brand, Nirvi Interiors, different from some of the ones that are already there, right? So if you're able to prove that, I'm sure you will find an investor. Though your industry is not something which is very popular as far as investors are concerned. Today, most of the investors are now talking about clean tech, green energy, green hydrogen, all the glamorous things they're talking about, or they're talking about food or pharma and things like that. But I'm sure, and since this is not my core area as far as industry is concerned, I don't know any investors in this space, but I'm sure if you find, there must be good amount of investors who are investing in interior brands or infrastructure. For me, I typically focus on food, pharma, chemicals. So this is not my area focus, and that is why I don't know. But I'm sure there are investors who will invest in you. Okay. So this was, I think, more or less earlier questions have been answered. Now only.
Sir, here is one question that by Neeru, that one major problem with student is they fail to reform their problem statements, and how to address this problem, which will help students.
Sorry, the students are what? What did you say? Students?
The question is like students are failing to reform the problem statement and how they should address this.
So see, whenever you start a business also, no, or whatever your startup, you will have to keep what in startup terms we call pivot. You have to keep pivoting. So you may start off with some X as a problem statement, but you may eventually find out that real problem is not X. So you pivot, you change your idea to something else, you change your idea. So it may take 6 months or a year for you to actually figure out what could be the problem statement, and keep changing your business model a little bit till you actually figure out. Like, I'll give you my, again, food tech Pathshala's example only, not that I'm trying to promote it here, but predominantly the model is for e-learning, that they're recorded courses, people will go and they will purchase. It is very popular in the US, where acceptance levels are much higher. In India, the acceptance levels is lower, right? So people want to see the person, people want to interact. So either in webinar like what we are doing right now, either they want it in that format or they want it in offline format. So even though I have a learning management system, everything is all set, I had to pivot. I'm like, okay, today I'm ready to offer online, offline, and e-learning, all three. So, or a combination of three. Like, I'm still trying to push. I say, okay, 20% will do offline, 80% you do e-learning, right? So you have to, end of the day, customer is the king. So you have to figure out the what will be finally accepted by your end customer, and it will work. I mean, you have to keep trying. There is, if there was a single roadmap that you do this, you do this, you do this, and this will happen, there's no such roadmap, and doesn't that roadmap doesn't always work. Like, I'll give you the same example. Like, whatever, where I studied, right, there were 84 students. Do you think so? Up until then we were more or less the same, right? Everybody studied 10th, then 12th, got good marks, went into engineering. But beyond, once we are out of that engineering, those 84 have gone at different routes, right? Some might be non-engineering, some may have done much better, some may not have been done much as much good. So that's how it works. So there is no necessarily like a secret formula that A, then B, then C, then D, then E. You have to find out what is your path, how much, where you have to keep pivoting for you to finally find out what will actually work for you and your business and your customer.
Okay. I think now we should stop with the questions. Thank you so much, sir, for such an inspiring and insightful session. I think your journey and your wisdom have undoubtedly ignited the entrepreneurial spirit in all of us. So thank you everyone for joining today. We hope that you found this session valuable and informative. So let's continue fostering innovation and entrepreneurship in our lives and careers. Stay tuned for more sessions from the IIC SCDL. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.